Guess we're ready, aren't we? Good evening. Call to order the meeting of the Edina Planning Commission for January 9th, 2012. I note that half of us up here are suffering from this cough or whatever that's going around, so we'll try not to cough into the microphones too much. First order of business is the roll call. Jackie, would you call the roll, please?
Here.
Here. Next item of business, approval of the meeting agenda. You've received these in your packet. Does anyone have any additions to add to the meeting agenda? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the agenda is approved. Next item on approval of the consent agenda, minutes of the regular meeting of the Edina Planning Commission for December 12th. Those were emailed to everyone. Does anyone have corrections or additions to the minutes of the December 12th meeting? Do we have a motion on those minutes?
Move approval of the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. The next item of the meeting is community comment. During community comment, residents are invited to share new issues, excuse me, or concerns that haven't been considered in the last 30 days by the Commission or which are not scheduled for future consideration, and which do not include the 2 items or 3 items on tonight's agenda. So I will ask, is there anyone in the public that wishes to come forward and address the Commission on any particular issue? If so, please come forward to one of the side podiums. So I recall my Latin. Seeing no one wishing to come forward with any comments, we will move to public hearings. The first item in the public hearing is a variance at 6844 Point Drive in Edina. Chris?
Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, the request is for a 46-foot front yard setback variance to match the existing non-conforming setback for a garage stall and a hall on the main floor, and to add a second-story addition to a home located at 6844 Point Drive. It's a corner lot, as highlighted. It is a rambler. The front of the home faces Point, which is the street to the east, and then to the south is Dunbarry Lane, with the garage loading off of Dunbarry. The property is subjected to 2 front yard setbacks because there are adjacent homes fronting both Dunbarry and also Point Drive. However, for the property to the west, the house is much further back than the subject property. It still dictates the side street or front yard setback of the subject property. So probably about 3/4, if not more, of the home is non-conforming in terms of setback from Dunbarry as it exists today. This is the subject home as you see it from the front along Point Drive, the property to the north at 6840 Point Drive, and then the property that is to the west at 4420 Dunbarry Lane. These are elevation drawings of the existing home. Again, the front door facing Point Drive, the garage door loading off of Dunbarry. This is a recent survey of the property. What you can see from there is the existing home to the north is relatively lined up with the front of the home fronting Point Drive. However, the home to the west is much further back, which dictates the setback along Dunbarry. What the property owner would like to do is add a small addition between the back wall of the garage and back wall of the house, add an additional garage stall, so going from a 2-car to a 3-car garage, and then over the main part of the house, fronting Point Drive, they would be putting a second story. The ordinance allows 200 square feet of additional encroachment per built floor at the existing non-conforming setback. The ordinance requires that additions in excess of 200 square feet must maintain the required setback. The additions on the main floor total 431 square feet, so they would be 231 square feet over that allowable limit to add an additional garage stall at the existing non-conforming setback. They're not getting any closer to Dunbarry, and then also infilling the small area. Now the area above that's proposed as second floor space, because there is no second floor currently, all of that would require a variance from the setback from Dunbarry. The home to the west is located 77.5 feet from Dunbarry Lane. The subject property is 31.5 feet. Therefore, a 46-foot variance from Dunbarry Lane is being requested. What this shows is the buildable area of the lot, this crosshatched area. It indicates the north side yard setback, the front yard setback along Point Drive, the rear yard setback of 25 feet, and then the setback that is dictated by the home that's to the west. So this is literally the buildable area of the lot. Again, what they're trying to do on the main floor is add an additional garage stall, a hallway connection towards the back of the house, infilling that small area between the sidewall of the garage and the back of the home, and then add a second story above. There will be no second story above the garage area. It's only over the main part of the house. The property is 13,007 square feet in area, with the home and proposed additions occupying less than 19% of the lot. The required setback from Dunbarry Lane unreasonably limits the building area of the lot, given the existing nonconforming setback provided by the original home built in 1957. Staff believes it is reasonable for the owner to duplicate the nonconforming setback from Dunbarry of the existing home to allow additions in excess of the 200 square feet allowed on the main level, and to also allow the expansion of a second story. Primary issue is the proposed development reasonable for the site. The proposed use is permitted in the R1 single dwelling unit zoning district and complies with all the requirements with the exception of the setback from Dunbarry Lane. The home is appropriate in size and scale for the lot, and improvements will enhance the property. They'll still be well below the maximum lot coverage requirements. The improvements will provide the same setback from the street as the existing home. There won't be any points getting closer to Dunbarry. The home will be a 2-story with an attached 3-car garage and should complement the character of the neighborhood. The home is well within the coverage requirements. Is the proposed variance justified? Will it relieve practical difficulties and prevent a reasonable use? Staff does believe the proposed variance is reasonable, given that historically the existing home has provided the nonconforming setback since built in 1957. The practical difficulty for the subject property is that the adjacent home was built with deeper setbacks from the street. The lot is virtually unbuildable without the benefit of a variance. Are there circumstances that are unique to the property, not common to every similarly zoned property, that are not self-created? Yes, a unique circumstance is the existing home has maintained the setback from both streets since 1957. The location of the other 2 homes affecting setback from the streets is not self-created. It's a corner lot. They're in a difficult situation with both frontages and the setbacks that are required. The applicant is merely asking to maintain the existing nonconforming setback from the south lot line. Will the variance alter the essential character of the neighborhood? No, the proposed home will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. The setback will mimic the existing setback Requiring any of the additions to maintain the south side street setback would push them unreasonably further back into the lot and severely limit their design options. Staff recommends the Planning Commission approve the variance. Approval should be based on the following findings. With the exception of the variance requested, the proposal will meet all of the requirements in the R1 district. The proposal will meet the required standards for a variance. The proposed use of the property is reasonable as it is consistent with the existing conditions, matches the non-conforming setback of the existing home. The imposed setbacks severely limit design opportunity. The intent of the ordinance is to provide adequate spacing from the street. The proposed home will match the setback of the existing home that has been located there since construction, and the spacing will not be compromised or changed. Approval of the variance should be subject to the following conditions: that they be subject to the survey's date stamped December 17th, 2012, and be consistent with the building plans and elevations date stamped December 11th, 2012. There was a letter from the neighbor that you received this evening that came from the neighbor who lives to the west, the property that actually dictates the setback for the subject property. The letter indicates that the property owner does support the small back addition and the second floor addition, but does not support the garage addition. And with that, I will stop and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chris. I've got two questions. If you look at the map or the overhead picture, 6844 matches front yard, or the side yard matches the side yard is 6845 and 6844, which are on the east side of Point Drive. And I assume because those houses are on the other side of Point Drive, that setback does not apply. That's correct. Okay. And then secondly, if you look at the picture that shows the buildable area of the lot, if you draw a line coming down from the, let me rephrase the question. The new garage addition does not create any problem with a side yard setback, does it?
It does not. It actually maintains a 25-foot rear yard setback. On a corner lot, they can choose either interior lot line for side and rear yard setback purposes if they have homes fronting both streets. It's just naturally been set up that the north lot line would be the side yard at a 10-foot setback, and then the west lot line would be a 25-foot. Or typically, it would be a 5-foot side yard setback for a garage if it were considered the side yard.
Okay. So I guess that is the rear yard. All right, that's my questions. Any other questions of staff? Commissioner Potts.
Chris, if they were not doing the new garage bay, would they need to even apply for a variance?
Yes, for the second story, because they don't have a second floor currently, and they'd be well over 200 square feet for that, even if there were.
Okay, even though the foundation area is only increasing by about 175?
For the first floor, they wouldn't need a variance, but for the second floor, they have to have a variance.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions of staff? Thank you. Would the applicant care to make a presentation?
I really don't have much to add to it.
Just
besides-
give us your name and address first.
Oh, what's that?
Give us your name and
Oh,
address.
Matt Cook, sorry. I'm the owner at 6844 Point Drive.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think the Planning Commission staff report said it pretty straightforward, and, you know, I'd be willing to answer any questions that anyone had. The house that we purchased there is in bad need of repair, and that's what we bought it for, with the intentions of doing that. And we were working within kind of the foundation, the setbacks that were already given is what we thought we were going to be allowed to do. And after I talked to Chris, I found this out, that house sets back, and we need to match that. So, you know, that's why I'm here today. So,
Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Forrest?
I have a question for the applicant. Have you, in going through your planning for this project, considered recessing that new garage addition at all to break up the front plane of the garage doors and to have less visual impact on your neighbors?
Setting it back from the rest, recessing it back 3 feet or something back. No, something I could consider. And I think I had talked to the Sherry Wood, who is the owner of the house that's to the, what would it be, to the west of mine, has the setback, and I know she's concerned with the sight lines coming to the street from her house, and that might address that a little better. So it's something to consider.
Other questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you. Would anyone else wish to comment? Yes, sir. Please come forward.
My name's Timothy Wood. My mother is Sherry Wood, the neighbor. She's at work today, so she asked me to come and provide her statement. I think it might be the same letter she already gave you that she asked me to read, so I don't know if that's redundant or not. But basically saying everything's great except the garage expansion because it affects the site as she's coming out the driveway. It's kind of a danger issue where she can't really see the cars coming from the one side, from his side. And as you start to go down the driveway, it's a slope, and so you can slide right down to the bottom. And so if he moves out farther, we're not gonna be able to see until we're partway down the driveway, and by then it might be too late. You'll just slide right down the driveway. In fact, I almost killed myself when I was 7 years old, sliding down the driveway, which I shouldn't have been doing, because I couldn't see cars coming down there, and now my kids are there all the time, and we want to be able to see as much as we can as we're coming down the driveway.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this issue? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion that the public hearing be closed and the matter be brought to the table. So moved. Is there a second? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Discussion here. Commissioner Platter?
I would agree with Commissioner Forrest's suggestion that move back, 2 to 4 feet at least, in that range. However that fits in the rest of the building, I think that would help you see those sight lines as you come across there.
Other discussion? Commissioner Carpenter?
For lack of any other input, I'll say ditto. I mean, basically, I don't have a stake in this. I'm fine with it either way, quite frankly. But what I'm hearing from the proponent, the applicant, is he's willing to make those adjustments, and if there's a sense that that adjustment will facilitate the sight lines that are being expressed on behalf of the affected property owner, then I would say let's go with that.
Commissioner Staunton?
Maybe just a question for the applicant. I can't quite tell from the site plan design whether you're planning, is that going to be additional storage, or is it are you just planning on widening?
On the garage stall?
Exactly.
Yeah, I only have 2 cars, but it's more for the storage, your mower, snow. It's the 2-car garage right now would, you'd be, lucky to fit the 2 cars in there and get your doors open.
So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, are you going to kind of reconfigure the garage door as well so that it'll be wider? What I'm trying to understand is if we set that back 2 or 4 feet, is that logistically going to work for a garage door opening?
Well, because it's a separate garage door.
So it will be a separate door at where
Yeah,
that-
there's a two-car garage door, a double door where the existing garage is. So the addition would have its own new garage door.
So
So
it shouldn't be able to-
if that was a design thing, that's, as you're asking if it can be done, yes.
Right, so it's not a
Sure, you could
logistical
bump that
problem.
back a couple feet and it's not, I mean, standing here, I don't see a problem with that.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments? Chris, could I ask a question? If the issue was not the setback from the street, well, I suppose there wouldn't be an issue, would there be?
No, we wouldn't be here.
Okay. So, but for that, they could build that garage just the way they've got it planned, right? Okay. Commissioner Fisher?
Chris, what is the setback? So that's a rear yard setback. We know that, I know they're over, the report says it's over 25 feet, but what exactly is that dimension? Do you have that? So it'd be the dimension from the west property line nearest the most affected neighbor.
It's exactly 25 feet.
It is
It
right on the
is.
line then. Is it, when you look up and down the whole block, is the anomaly this property or is it the two to the west?
I guess it's, whatever perspective you take. The
Depends on which
subject home is the closest, the other two are further back. There's only two of them, and then you go around the corner and there's homes that are further back.
I'm just, Chair Grable pointed out that if you look down the street
If
the
you
other
look- if
way,
you-
this is exactly in line with the rest of
Right,
the
if you
block.
go further east,
If you go
they're all
east, it's the
sloped
same.
closer.
If you go west, it's,
It's further back.
Right.
yeah. Commissioner Schroeder?
Mr. Chair, I understand that the garage addition where it's located now allows for the full 25-foot setback. If the garage is set back 2 feet or 4 feet, it not only slides it back 2 feet, but structurally, the building will move probably the same amount, 2 feet or so, because you still have to get the garage door. You can't put the garage door right next to the wall where it returns. So the garage will slide to the west probably 2 feet, and then the applicant will be required to have a rear yard setback as well. So this shift requires another variance. I just want people to be aware of that if this is the direction we're going to be.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Schroeder's point is that if we move the garage back 3 feet, in order to accommodate the new garage door, we may have to widen that garage, which would require a variance on the rear yard setback. I think the point is, it may not be just as easy as saying, we'll back up the garage by 3 feet to do this. And I guess that was,
That's my point. You can't structurally put the garage door against that wall. It's not structurally possible to do that.
right. And that was part of my question for Chris is, I'm a bit reluctant to rejigger a plan at this table, notwithstanding the fact that the applicant has said he's willing to do that, but you haven't really thought about it very much.
Yeah, that's something I would have to, I can't, I couldn't, I hear what he's saying, and I'd have to double check that with an architect, or, so. Yeah, I mean, if it could be done, I guess I would, if it could be done, I would not be opposed to it.
Right,
If
but
it
the
can.
question is, can it be done? And you
Right.
don't know that, and we don't
And I
know
don't know
that.
that
And
answer.
the proposal before us is what the proposal is before us. Other comments? Commissioner?
All right, well, I'm seeing that the rest of the variance besides the garage door, which isn't even in question in the variance that we have planned, is consistent with the character of the neighborhood. It's consistent with the setbacks along Point Drive. So I would, obviously I'm not a voting member, but my vote would be to approve it as it is put before us.
Thank you. Other comments? What is your pleasure? Commissioner Fisher?
I'm going to move approval of the variance request per the staff recommendation and findings. And the reason for this is, I agree, I think trying to change the design of the garage right now is a bad idea. And I don't really think it's necessary, given the fact, if it were 5 feet from the next property line, I'd probably be more concerned, but it's 25 feet. So the issue of sight lines, it's not that common to have a 25-foot setback in that proximity to your house. So, the question is it a change to the neighbors? Yes, but is it a hazard? I think it's a change in how you back out of your driveway and when you have to look for oncoming cars and such. But I think it would be unfair to put that burden on the neighbor, given the hardships of this property.
Motion's been made to approve the variance subject to the staff report.
Second.
Who's the second? The further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Opposed? The variance is granted with one nay vote. There is an appeal procedure available, so you're advised to wait for that time period to go through, but otherwise go forth and build. Excuse me. I hope so. The next item for consideration is, where's my agenda? Here it is. Variance at 5024 Bruce Avenue, Edina. Chris?
Thank you. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commission, the request is for a 15.96-foot setback variance from Minnehaha Creek for a new home to be built on property located at 5024 Bruce Place for Andrew and Christine Craig. It's highlighted in orange. It backs up to Minnehaha Creek and is on the north side of Bruce Place cul-de-sac. The subject property was built in 1940, consists of a 2-story home with an attached 2-car garage. There's an aerial photograph of the site. Currently, it's quite a large lot, but it's deceptive because there isn't a lot of buildable area for a number of reasons. The setback from the creek that's required is 50 feet. There's also floodplain in the lower areas of the property closest to the creek here, which are unbuildable. And then you have your standard front yard setback and interior side yard setbacks. This is a photograph of the home as it looks today. This is the home to the east, and it sits up. It's at a higher elevation than the home adjacent to it. That's the subject property. And then this is the home that is to the left or to the west of the subject property. and it is at a lower elevation than the subject home. So they kind of tear down as you get towards the end of the cul-de-sac. This is a survey of the house and the property that's existing as well as proposed, so it's a little bit confusing. The existing outline of the house is the lighter gray area that's boxed in, and then the bolder, darker boxed in area is the footprint of the proposed house. And the various setbacks at the different points of the structure are pointed out. Really the difference is the new home will be closer to the creek than the existing home. However, it won't be as close as an existing deck that is currently behind the existing house. The proposed new deck will be further away than the existing deck. The applicant is planning to tear down the existing non-conforming home and replace it with a new two-story home with an attached garage. The applicant has indicated that the new home will conform to all of the ordinance requirements with the exception of the required setback from Minnehaha Creek. The setback from Minnehaha Creek that's required is 50 feet. That changed in the early 90s. The previous setback that was required was 25 feet. But to be consistent with the state requirements, which changed in the early 90s, Edina had to change their setbacks from water bodies to be consistent with the state. We couldn't be less restrictive, we can be more restrictive or equally as restrictive. We chose the path of matching the required setbacks that the DNR has now mandated. So from previous to 1990, the setbacks from Minnehaha Creek have now doubled. They went from 25 to 50. Some of the other water bodies went from 25 to 75 feet. So to say that there are some nonconformities throughout Edina, there definitely are, especially along Minnehaha Creek and in some of our other lake properties. There's actually quite a few properties that are nonconforming. The home is proposed to be at 34.04 feet from Minnehaha Creek, or 6.34 feet closer to the creek than the existing home, which is at 40.38 feet. The existing deck is at 33.4 feet, so the new home at 34.04 feet from Minnehaha Creek will actually be further than the existing deck that's there currently, but closer to the creek than the existing home, with the proposed deck at 47.17 feet. The home will be oriented and sited similar to the existing home. It won't be, completely different than before. What you will notice on the survey is this is showing the required setback line, which indicates that overlap into the 50-foot setback. It is a very tight, buildable area, and it's also a very odd shape in terms of trying to build a house within the allowable footprint. So there are challenges with the lot in trying to build on the property. The primary issue is the proposed development reasonable for the site? Staff believes the proposal is not reasonable. The proposed use is permitted in the R1 dwelling unit district and would comply with all the requirements with the exception of the setback from Minnehaha Creek. The proposed setback from the creek is, however, closer than the existing home. The home, while appropriate in size and scale for the lot, will bring the building mass closer to a natural resource. The improvements will provide for a new home to be closer to the creek than allowed by code and currently provided on the site. So it's kind of moving in the wrong direction. The new home erodes an already non-conforming setback from a natural resource that should be protected as much as possible. That was the reason for the change in setback, is to try to reduce the number of encroachments along the creek. Is the proposed variance justified? Does it relieve practical difficulties that prevent reasonable use from complying with the ordinance requirements? Staff believes that the proposed variance is not reasonable, that the new home is less conforming to the current code than the existing home. Staff finds it reasonable to rebuild the home perhaps no closer to the creek than the existing home, which would still require a variance, but not to match the existing setback. Are there circumstances that are unique to the property, not common to every similarly zoned property, that are not self-created? The required setbacks are meant to protect a natural resource. The proposed setback will be more impacting along the creek than the existing nonconforming setback of the current home, and the proposed setback from the creek is a self-imposed condition given that they're building a new home. Will the variance alter the essential character of the neighborhood? Perhaps. The proposed home will be closer to the creek than the existing structure. Staff recommendation is to deny the request based on the following findings. With the exception of the variance requested, the proposal would meet the required standards and ordinances in the R1 district. However, it would appear that a new home could be designed to match at least the existing nonconforming setback of the home, which would be a more reasonable variance to consider. The proposal would not meet the required standards for a variance because the proposed use of the property is not reasonable, as it will increase the encroachment into the setback required and currently provided from Minnehaha Creek. And the practical difficulties in complying with the ordinances are the narrow building pad. I mean, staff acknowledges that it is a difficult site to work with. Staff could perhaps support a request to maintain that existing nonconforming setback of the home from the creek with new construction. However, staff cannot support a request or identify difficulties with not matching that existing nonconforming setback. There are some letters of support that were set in front of you this evening. The home that's adjacent to the east, the property owner sent a letter, and then also a property owner that is across the cul-de-sac. And with that, I will stop and answer any questions you may have. This is the front elevation side elevation of the home, as well as the rear and west side elevation of the home.
Thank you, Chris. Are there questions of staff? Commissioner Platter.
Chris, when you talk about the setback from the creek, how is that in 50 foot? Does that allow any decks into it, or how does that read? I mean, I know I wouldn't allow a building structure in it, but how does it allow, or does it allow for anything like a gazebo or decks or ancillary things?
It's not, decks are supposed to comply
Okay.
with that requirement as
Okay.
well.
Chris, could you go over the side yard setback requirements for this? You're showing 10 feet on one side, I think 5 on the other.
Yes, and the 5 feet would be on the east side, and that's the garage. It does not exceed the 15-foot requirement, which would allow the minimum side yard setback. I was concerned on the west side, and I did indicate to the applicant that it didn't appear to me, just these are preliminary drawings, and they were not, they didn't have dimensions on it necessarily, but I said it looked, at least in the front corner, because it was a little over 11 feet, that it might not meet that requirement, and I was told that they would work it so that it would meet that requirement. They didn't want to spend a lot of money up front on design work on it.
Chris, when the state changed the law on the setbacks along the creek and that, was there any language included discussing variances? Or it's just, we changed the setbacks and then you manage it the way you always manage things?
Exactly. I mean, we have the review authority. The local city has the review authority for that.
Other questions of staff? Thank you. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation?
Hello, my name is Dan Murphy, and I live at 5004 Abbott Avenue South. I'm one of the owners of the company that designed and is planning on constructing this. There's a few items I would like to talk about, and I believe, one of them was brought up about the deck setbacks. When we were designing this, we knew that we were going to keep the building further away from the creek than what the structure currently is. And the fact that decks need to have a variance, decks need to have a permit, decks need to be approved, just like a house would, or just like anything else would, we deliberately brought the house further away from the creek than the existing deck. And to us, that was meaning that we were encroaching less on Minnehaha Creek than what the existing is. And to us, that was made logical sense. The other thing I would like to bring up is I talked to a woman, I've been in contact with a woman from the DNR, and I believe, and you might want to check this out as well, but the DNR does not mandate a setback from Minnehaha Creek. Minnehaha Watershed does not have a setback from Minnehaha Creek. The DNR mandates a setback from standing bodies of water. And so they defer to municipalities, and the protection of the natural resources, what was very important to us as well, as it is to the homeowners. A few things that are unique about the property, as Chris stated, is that there isn't much buildable space there. And what we have been very diligently doing is to try to maintain the protection of that resource, not only in an aesthetic view and how that resource can be managed, but also the ability for the neighbors to appreciate the natural resource that they are on. Now, we had some plans that would move the house further to the west, and the neighbors to the west, their sightlines would be completely blocked by what we could build there. We are not impacting anybody's visual, anybody's enjoyment, anybody's use of Minnehaha Creek by asking for this variance, because where we are asking to get a little bit closer does not affect anybody. The only one it would affect even mildly would be the neighbor to the west, and they're the ones that wrote the letter of support. We have tried very hard to make sure that this house fits into the neighborhood both aesthetically and environmentally. Then going back to my point about, I agree with you that protection of the natural resource is a very important thing. We work very hard, my company does, to make sure that everything we do in Edina is organic and works well. And one of the things that working with the Minnehaha Creek watershed is that because this is a pretty substantial floodplain in this area, we're going to have to do, and we've already discussed with them, that we have to do a buffer in there. We are going to make more protection to Minnehaha Creek when we're done with this than what's there currently. And if the basis of denying this request is that we are going to be intruding on a natural resource, we're going to actually be making that natural resource a better place than where we were before. And Minnehaha Creek watershed is, it makes you guys look like a walk in the park. I'm sorry, there's so many different things that we go through with them to make sure that it's done properly. And they have their own inspections, they have their own hydrologists, and we have to make sure that that site is better than it was before. And we took that on just fine. We knew that that was going to have to happen. But we really can't, I don't think that there would be able, and I appreciate the fact that Chris had mentioned that there's the possibilities of using the existing footprint to build in, but we tried, and we really don't think that it's possible to do what is being asked on the footprint of the property that we have. I mean, you can see by some of the calculations, we are limited down to a very small footprint on a substantial lot that we can actually use. And I don't think that the area that we are asking for, number one, goes against the spirit of this code, because we're actually further away from the creek than what the deck is, or goes against what the intent of it is, which is trying to maintain a beautiful neighborhood and not encroaching on the neighbors at all, or on sight lines. That's it.
Thank you. Questions of the applicant? Commissioner Potts?
I apologize if I've missed this, but is there a description of the landscape work you are doing?
No,
in our packet?
No, we don't have that. We have to work with the watershed for that. But we can get that to you guys. I mean, it has to be approved for a draining plan anyway, so that'll all be a part of the process.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Schroeder?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the applicant related to the buffer. Now, you said that, I understand the part about being further back from, than what the building is today, or close to it in some cases. But you talked about the value of protecting the natural resource. And from what I can tell, by setting at the same location, you're essentially protecting the visual resource. But what are you actually doing on the site to protect the natural resource? I think these rules were originally set up in part to protect kind of the visual quality of water bodies, but they were also set up to prevent encroachment of urban development too close to water bodies. So, and protecting the ecological aspects of those water bodies. So you talked about protecting this, providing a buffer. What is the buffer other than just visual?
Well, the buffer that's going to have to be placed is because it's a wetlands buffer that happens there. Now, in that area, you can tell by just the way the houses were designed that it's a stepped or a sort of a tiered yards that are there. And so, you know, one of the other items that we deliberately did on this is that we didn't want to push the house further to the east because that's going to tighten the proximity from the existing house to the neighbor's house. And one of the things is that there is no way to get any emergency vehicles, any necessary, you know, let's say there's a tornado goes through and all the trees get knocked down. There's no way to get any vehicles or any emergency vehicles behind any of their house or the next three houses because the distance between the existing house and the neighbors is wide enough for that to happen. Now, what we have to do is that because of that space, it's not necessarily a gigantic runoff area, but it's a pretty substantial place where water comes down. What we have to do, based on what the watershed district is telling us, is that we have to set up sort of I don't want to call it a berm, but buffered zone to maintain the wetlands and have it more of an area that will absorb that moisture before it just runs off into the creek. And so by doing that, that's going to improve the whole creek system, the whole, you know, all the water that runs through and past our place or past the Craigs down the rest of the system by creating that sort of, I don't want to call it a collection zone because it's not that, but it's a way just to filter the water before it gets to the creek. And that's what we have to do according to the watershed.
So that's happening on the east side to deal with,
The whole back, because the whole back of their yard pitches downhill towards the creek.
so between the berm, as you called it, and the edge of the creek, what will be the pattern of development that helps protect the resource? What is that zone? What's the width of that zone? And maybe it's variable
Well,
based on the
I don't
site
have,
condition.
if you could pull up the.
But then the other question is, what is in there? What do you plan on doing? Is it turf? Is it lawn? Is it?
We haven't finalized the design for that, but it's.
I have talked with a landscaper that.
Your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Kristen Craig. I live at the house. We have, our primary reason for placing the house where it is, and it is farther back than where it is right now, where the deck is. And by keeping it up, essentially, our lot is very sloped on the narrow side. So it's a big wooded bank there. And by keeping the house up here, all of the lower line area in here, the whole lot kind of goes down like that. And so it gets flooded down here, and what we had to do at our cabin in northern Minnesota, we had a similar situation, and we planted, native plants and all these things that were, good for the water body, so that, because it does just flow from the street down into the creek. And I don't know if you've been in that creek, but you don't want to go in there without shoes on. And so it's our intention to keep a natural, stone all along the edge, plant the, wonderful plants along in there that are native to the habitat, and, not just have grass that runs all the way down there. If we are to place our house farther to, is it the west?
Maybe west.
To McElrath. it, it literally, it would be this bowling alley of a house that would completely block their entire view. And we adore our neighbors, and we don't want to do that to them. This is the only place within 4 houses where you can get even a mower through there. The other houses, because they're pie-shaped lots, are so close together that that's the only chute to get back there. I know for certain that our next-door neighbors have a tree that is going to come down in this next year. We have one that is, you know, on the verge. And the only way to get those out is in between our 2 houses. And that's for, you know, essentially the whole cul-de-sac. And so if we move closer that way, not only does it impact their sight lines, it makes it impossible to get anything in or out of there. We're not trying to make a huge house, but our house, because of the way it's built, has stairs in every room. You can't go into any room in our house without going up or down. It's like little boxes that were added on. And it's quirky, and it's charming, but quirky's hard to work with. And we're trying to do the best we can with this lot. We love this lot, and we want to try to comply as much as we can, trying to respect our neighbors, not only the views, but the access to the backyard. We absolutely pledge to, you know, do the right thing in terms of plantings for the creek. It is a natural resource that we want to protect, and we will do our part in that regard. We're not going out farther than the existing deck. We've got all sorts of stuff that's there already, and we purposely kept it farther back from that. It's only 1 foot taller than our existing house, so we truly believe that it will fit in to the neighborhood and not be a negative impact on the lot or the creek.
But what are you replacing the deck with, though? You're replacing the deck with house, aren't you?
At a different location. So it's not going to be any closer to the creek than the
No,
proposed
I
house is.
understand that, but right now, across the back of the existing house is a deck, correct?
Yes, but there won't be one.
That's right. There will not be a deck there. There will be house there.
Correct. But not all the way out to where
Not
the
to
deck
where
is
the
now.
line of the deck is right now.
Question.
You have a question?
Yes.
Mr. Potts?
I appreciate you bringing this in, I guess, in the form that it's in, so it's not fully, you know, worked out. I think that's a good idea to get feedback as you pursue a variance like this. I've got concerns about how close you are to the creek, similar to others, and it also, from what I can see here, the finished floor of the house is, the main level is pretty well above the creek by about 20 feet or so.
Yes.
Above the water level. But you're proposing an extremely deep foundation, which takes you down, back down those 20 feet. So you're basically at that water level. So I think I'd like to see more information about what you're doing to protect the creek, not just once the house is complete, but even during construction, because this is going to be a massive project, and we just can't tell with the information you've given us. And then additionally, I guess I'd suggest trying to pull the house closer to the street as much as you can to avoid this setback, because even though you're further away from the creek than the existing deck, is that on a corner post, like a single foundation post there?
There is a fire hydrant on the corner of our lot. The way the houses flow through the cul-de-sac, this was, again, a big portion of why we're placing the house where we're placing it, is to keep the line consistent. And if you were to drive in there, you would see that, you know, pulling the house forward, it would look odd. It would be too close. And even though we could come farther forward with the current setbacks, it would look funny.
Well, and let me add, if we started pulling that further forward, we would start dealing with the side yard setback then. because as we get closer, as we come forward, we're getting closer to our neighbors. And then there's the height requirement setback, so then we would be back in here for another variance for that as well. And then to address the depth, the magic number there is 871, I believe. And the watershed mandates where we can go with our depth. And the 871 is that there's no allowable openings below 871 feet. And we're not below 871 feet on that, and that's for the protection of the watershed. And so we've addressed that going into this already, if that helps.
Okay, is that the 100-year?
100-year
Floodline.
floodplain, yep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions of the applicant? Commissioner Forrest?
Can you speak a little to Commissioner Potts's comment about the impact during construction, excavation and such, as far as what you're going to do to mitigate any erosion or nutrient washdown or whatever?
We have substantial silt fencing that has to go up and continuous monitoring by the watershed district to make sure that those silt fences are maintained and are constantly being updated if there's any damage to any of them during construction. But we have a pretty stringent requirements that we have to follow to make sure that that's being done so that that nothing would flow into the creek. And we're aware of all those things going into it too, so our eyes are wide open.
Other questions of the applicant? Thank you. Do others wish to address this issue? Please come forward.
My name's Todd Peterson. I own 5034 across the street from 5024 Bruce Place. I'm just here out of curiosity. I had notice of the hearing and didn't know anything about it. From what I see, knowing the neighborhood intimately, I've floated the creek several times with my daughters, so I know the landscape back there. This strikes me as very reasonable and fitting into the neighborhood. The portion that seems to be looking for the variance, it's awfully high on the hill over the creek. I don't think it intrudes from anyone else who's floating the creek or, you know, having the limited access back to the creek in that part. It won't stand out in any kind of domineering fashion, and the rest of the yard is the very large watershed flood zone, and I'm sure just the action of improving the house will do nothing but improve the runoff attributes as well. So as one neighbor, I don't see any problem with it, and I welcome the improvements.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Do others wish to address the issue? Seeing none, I'll ask for motion that the public hearing be closed. So moved. Is there a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, discussion here at the table.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner. Kevin, go ahead.
I am, one of the things that strikes me about this lot, I just did a couple of quick calculations, and maybe they're right, but the proposed lot coverage for the proposed house, it looks like, is 10%. And the proposed buildable area of this lot is 13%. There's only 13% of the lot that can be built on. So, you know, in our code permits what, 25% lot coverage? But because of the floodplain, because of the odd shape of the lot, because of the 50-foot setback, there's only 13% of the property to even work with. So right there, that feels like a pretty unusual situation. I am curious to talk more about Commissioner Schroeder's concerns about kind of landscaping and the like, and maybe that's one of the ways we can help deal with it. It does look like on the east side of the property, it's much more severe slope, whereas the west side kind of flattens out. I have actually been back there at your neighbors for an event, and it is when it's dry, it's a beautiful area back there. But I just wanted to start the discussion by saying I'm struck by how little elbow room there is, even though it's a big lot, and I'm not sure. I know that there is quite a view from the neighbors to the west as that part of the creek comes around, and I understand why they don't want to move the house that direction to infringe on it. So it's feeling like a pretty unusual situation to me, but I'm anxious to hear what my colleagues have to say.
Commissioner Schroeder?
Well, let me start, since you mentioned my comment, and I raise it as a concern, and what I want to do is probe a little bit more of the applicant's response, because they said they were interested in protecting the resource. And if maybe staff can reinterpret this if I say it incorrectly, but I believe when the shoreline ordinances, the model ordinances when they were created by the state, were meant to protect the resources. And what they would do is they would set up something that would be established as a trigger. So they would set up a hardcover threshold that when you're passed over that, it would require more intensive review. And it's the same thing with the setback. And so what it tells me is that if those are considered triggers, it shouldn't be considered an absolute for every single instance. And that's the way it's actually being interpreted right here, unless we can provide something that actually better protects the resource, even giving the improvements that are proposed. What the applicant seemed to be describing was the creation of a vegetative buffer, a filter strip essentially along the creek, which is a significant environmental improvement for the creek itself, especially if the current area up to the creek is lawn area. If you were to take a 10-foot native planting vegetative filter strip along the entire edge, it's a significant improvement, it's a significant wildlife enhancement along that length of the creek, and there's a significant length of the creek along this particular property. So while I'm sensitive to what our ordinance says, and I'm maybe a little knowledgeable about how the state's model ordinances were created, or how they set those up, I think the bigger thing is recognizing how we actually protect the resource other than just recognizing the dimensional limitations of our ordinance. And so if we proceed, I would actually, and if we are in favor of this, and I think I'm generally in favor of this, but I would like to probe a little more some of the things that Commissioner Potts was talking about. I would like to see some criteria requiring them to develop and maintain a vegetative filter strip along the entire length of their property abutting the creek, using native plantings in order to better protect the resource of the creek.
Sure.
Well, to address that issue, before we can do anything, we have to get our the wetlands delineation approved by Minnehaha Creek Watershed. So they have to approve what we are presenting for that buffer before we can even start construction. So I'll have to have that. I mean, they're a separate entity from the city of Edina, obviously, but they have the right to put a halt order on any project that's on Minnehaha Creek that does not have a valid buffer system in place. So we are required to have that approved, signed off on, and deposited with Minnehaha Creek Watershed before we start construction. So that's part of this whole process. I hope that answers your question.
Well, it does partly, but I see a difference between a buffer, which is typically a dimensional setback, which has no particular requirements for what's in that, being different than what I was describing as a vegetative filter strip using native plantings, as your client was suggesting could be created.
Right, but that is what the watershed is going to, or Minnehaha Creek Watershed will ask us to present to them. When I'm talking about buffer, I'm not talking about a temporary buffer system that you had asked about to make sure that there isn't any runoff during construction. I'm talking about a wetlands buffer system that will have to be approved, which is a permanent system in place that the watershed approves. And I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what the intent of this is.
I'm actually on your side. I wasn't asking a
Oh, I
question.
know, but I just wanted to let you know that that is
Yeah.
in place for us, and we want to make sure that that happens.
So,
Commissioner Staunton?
so do the watershed district rules suggest the kind of improvements you're talking about that would enhance the resource?
Mr. Chair, answering Commissioner Staunton's question, they probably address it, but we're being asked for a variance based on some other condition besides what the watershed district rules are. We have an ordinance that sets 50 feet as the setback. They're asking for some relief from that. I think we should take the advantage, or take the position that we are also trying to protect the resource, and we see some methods of doing that to mitigate the encroachment they have into the setback that our ordinances indicate.
And I'm fine with doing that as a condition. I'm just trying to figure out how to mechanically get there. And I thought maybe the rules are a proxy for that, but it sounds like they don't have, or
I guess I would say I'm not familiar, and I've worked with the watershed district a lot, but I don't know exactly how they would dictate this particular instance. So I'd be reluctant to put our authority for granting a variance off on somebody else's decision.
Commissioner Potts?
Just to build on that, I'm sure there's more than one way to do this. And it would be nice to see and have described to us what in terms of dimensions, what in terms of plant material, in terms of retaining walls, structures, whatever else is going to be done. We'll go in there, and is it the minimum standard set by the watershed, or is it something greater than that as a way of protecting the natural resource?
Commissioner Platter?
So I'm really struggling that we're getting closer to the creek at all with the building. I realize the deck is there right now. But to me, equating a deck and a building is not the same thing. I mean, a building is much more impactful. The foundations are going down. We're really trying to preserve the resource here, and I know they have a very difficult lot, but I'm really struggling that we're putting a house closer to the creek than it is right now, especially as it need a variance relief to do that. I would be much more receptive if it stayed within the existing line on that side. I just have a large issue with us getting closer to the creek when, it's a small thing, but, we've overbuilt all these areas. How are we protecting these resources along with that?
Commissioner Platter, I think the question is probably one beyond which we can answer tonight. We don't know, and it hasn't been demonstrated to us perhaps by the applicant, that what they're doing is actually an improvement to the environment of the creek versus what's there. I actually think, and when I was mentioning those triggers, and hardcover is the easiest one to look at, we could create a development that's much more sensitive to the natural environment at 35 or 40% lot coverage than many of the developments we see at 10 or 15% lot coverage, just depending on what methods we use to treat stormwater runoff, how we deal with other features of the site. So that's why I don't want to rely on simply a dimensional standard. And I think if we're relying on simply the dimensional standard of 50 feet, then we're looking at this as a visual quality issue, not a natural resource quality issue.
Moving it closer to the creek is a detriment to the creek. So,
It's
that's my opinion.
I would agree that it's a visual quality impact to the creek. I
Not
don't know
visual.
that we've proven that it's a natural resource impact. We may have more and different kind of water coming off the existing house than we would have off of the new house. We don't know yet.
It's a larger house, so you're probably gonna have more coming off of it.
Commissioner Forrest?
If we were to put that requirement for a filter strip, is there a way we could define that or describe it adequately as a condition?
We could. I think some of this we would have to put back on staff because we don't know what's being proposed, and just in even looking at the site plan, at the survey, we have extremely steep slopes at the easterly end of the site, which is going to make it more difficult to actually catch water as it's moving down gradient. So it's going to be more difficult to do that. It's not impossible to do that. And in particular, the area between the east end of the house and the east property line, we will have water coming through there, and it's going to be difficult to treat that water as it comes through. And that's what I'm saying. We just don't have from this applicant enough information to be able to interpret what they do to better protect the resource that they mentioned they're interested in protecting.
Commissioner Carpenter?
I'm intrigued by what the Commissioner is saying, but I'm thinking about it in the context of what action we can take tonight, because I agree, it sounds like we don't really have enough information to make decisions. And I also understand that the way we handle or treat the water as it comes down the slope can impact, what the impact of water, water quality or how it impairs the water quality when it reaches the creek itself. So those types of things are interesting to me, and I'm kind of supportive of looking at it in that perspective. But it seems to me that, at least in terms of what we need to act on today, that we probably don't have that information unless we feel comfortable enough to create a series of assumptions to impose conditions that may or may not fit. I don't know if there's a different perspective on that. I'd be interested in hearing it.
Well, if I might, I think Commissioner Schroeder's points are well taken about the necessity of the buffer strip and the protection of the resource from a resource standpoint. But I think there's also the issue with a lot like this, unlike the variance that we just considered, where we're concerned about, the neighbor's view and one neighbor versus the proposed variance. This one impacts what is really a public resource, the Minnehaha Creek, and how that works. And I'm inclined to agree with, in fact, I do agree with Commissioner Platter, that I'm not really happy about seeing a house moving closer to the creek. And it seems to me that this proposal could be redone somehow to more closely conform to the existing house foundation and not have to have a variance to move the foundations closer to the creek. I think more work needs to be done on this proposal. Commissioner Forrest.
Well, we do have the option of tabling this until the next meeting and allowing the applicant to bring more information forward regarding how they would be treating that part of the lot. And in that way, rather than vote yes or no at this point, and when it may be a very reasonable project once we see the remainder of it.
Or we could vote it down and then have another proposal brought back.
It would have to be substantially different, otherwise they'd have to wait a year before they could reapply if they are denied.
Did everybody hear that? It would have to be substantially different, or else they would have to wait a year. I don't know what substantially different means.
I'll just say, I'm against tabling if it doesn't address the setback that it's doing, that it's further into the creek than it is right now. I mean, to me, that's my biggest point right now. And tabling it kind of kicks the can down the road in a way.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Staunton.
And I'd like to hear from Mr. Murphy, but, I mean, the way I see it, I feel sympathetic to the application, but I need some reassurance more than what I've got. The resource is going to be protected. I understand Commissioner Platter and the chair's line in the sand. Mine's a little more flexible than that, but I guess I'd be looking to the applicants to tell us how, you know, if they can give us more information. If we were to continue this, bring it back at a subsequent meeting when you could give us more details about what you're proposing to do in terms of the, whether it's the water quality treatment or whatever the landscaping might be.
We can put that together, and I'm completely comfortable doing that. You know, one of the questions that you had addressed as far as the runoff of the roof and everything else, it's very easy to manipulate where water goes off of a roof with the gutter system and drainage systems, and, you know, even going underground as the water comes down the downspout. We can take that whole roof and direct all the water wherever we want to go. And I think that's part of what you had mentioned, is that the size of the roof really, it doesn't have a bearing on where the water goes. We can do the proper drainage system. We can, you know, if you wanted to do that, I could, you know, present it to Chris or bring a water runoff proposal to where everything is going to be flowing and how it's going to be flowing and what the topographical changes will be to make sure that the water is doing what it's supposed to do. You know, we do that on every project. I mean, in certain parts of Edina, everybody's backyard goes down to a funnel. I mean, you can't have the rear of the house drain to the back. You've got to figure out a way to get it to go back out to the street to go into the curbs, and we can do that. And so we can address all of those issues to make sure that there isn't any, not only we won't add water back into the creek without manipulating where it goes, but we will have less water off of the roof system going directly down to the creek the way it is now and the way that other neighbors are. And so that is all a part of what this whole idea is for us, is to maintain that natural resource. And I can put together a drainage plan and a, you know, sort of a landscaping layout and a downspout layout and how the water is all going to be managed, not only during construction, which is a valid concern, but after the fact and for years to come as well. So yeah, I can provide that for you.
What's the sequence of when you go in front of the watershed district? Do you have to have our variance before you can go in front of them, or will you?
No, I mean, it's important I'm not going to go in front of the watershed district until I know that I can be built.
Yeah.
So I would not have gone there first to do that. It's not a logical sequence. But I can certainly have my contact at the watershed, you know, contact Chris or contact the building department or planning department, whatever, and tell them, you know, what we are doing and that they are on board with what our water plan is for that area. Because, you know, like I said, I've been working with them for months, so, you know, and I actually have an email from him stating that, you know, there isn't a setback that they require, but they are going to require X, Y, and Z to make sure that we do it before they will grant us anything, and we have to do it. So, I mean, it should address all the environmental impacts. Does it address the proximity? No, but, you know, you made a good point about you could do better drainage if you're on top of the creek if it's done well than you could no matter where you're sitting if it's done poorly. So.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we continue this to our next meeting. I don't know if that's enough time or if you need a meeting. Okay. So that we can receive additional information about mitigation efforts that the applicant can take to address the protection of the resource.
Motion's been made and seconded to continue this discussion to the next meeting to give the applicant an opportunity to bring forth some suggestions and plans on water remediation, and I would hope you would include some of the items that Commissioner Schroeder was discussing in terms of what type of landscape barriers would be available along the creek. Carrie, is there, by continuing this to the next meeting, are we running into any kind of time issue? Or Chris?
No.
Okay,
Not at all.
thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to continue this matter. Is there, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Yes, opposed.
Okay. I oppose it also, but the motion to continue passes, so we'll look forward to hearing from you.
Mr. Chair, if I can just kind of piggyback slightly on that, I think, judging from the conversation up here, any information or evidence that you can provide as well about that might help our colleagues who are concerned about the proximity to the creek would probably be a good idea.
Thank you. We look forward to hearing from you at our next meeting. Thank you. Well, it's the end of the month. End of the month. Okay. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a report from the illustrious Subcommittee on Zoning Ordinance Update Residential Development. Commissioner Plattiter. Please.
Finally, something uncontroversial. Okay. Is it working? Got it. So don't vote me down yet. Thank you. I know you're looking to do it, but so thanks everyone. We're on behalf of myself, Arlene, and Ken, we're here tonight to just give an update as to where we're at with the our working group residential ordinances. Just for a little background, as you're probably aware, we were appointed back in late October, early November to look at this as an issue, see what's going on, provide back some recommendations. So really what we're presenting tonight is accumulation of those pieces. We've gone out, we've met with some small groups, we've met with city staff, done some reviews, looked at comments from folks such as the Morningside Neighborhood Association, kind of what's going on. So what we're here tonight to do is to give you a little bit of update as to where we're at, and then also where we want to go, if there's any comments or suggestions. We've really kind of right now just got to a point where we've set up some things. We haven't really made any recommendations to date. We want to ensure that what we're doing meets what you were thinking, if you have any suggestions along the way with that. So again, our goal was to develop a process to understand the current residential rebuild. We also want to create a public forum to address any things. There's a lot of blogs out there and letters being written to the city staff, city council, planning commission, all those types of things going on. The initial areas of our focus were to study if new lot subdivisions under 75 feet are feasible, and also resident concerns with the current residential rebuild situation. And that's what we originally started with, and it's kind of not really gone different ways, but we found some other things out along the way as well. So a little bit of history on these issues for the people that were on the commission in 2007, 2008. I was not. There's a lot of discussion on many of these same things at that time. Some things were done, some things were not. Just a real quick line here, and actually Carrie after this can go into more detail on it if you wish. So building height restrictions were enacted. There were none before, so there's a maximum of 35 to 45 feet to the ridge line. The building height was from the existing grade rather than proposed, so if you're raising the lot, you couldn't just keep raising the building with that. The side yard setbacks were increased on lots between 60 and 75, so there's a variation in those. The larger size the lot, the more setback you have. There's a graduated scale on that. The bay window there's an exception was limited for that. The first floor elevation was put in place, so that only allowed the new house to be 1 foot higher than the adjacent ones. That stopped a lot of false raising, if you will, or false making the house the biggest one on the block just by raising the grade 4 or 5 feet. Some other things that were looked at were residential FAR discussions. That was actually looked at but was not passed at that time. And I don't have all the details on that. Maybe Carrie has some more you can talk to. So our progress to date through November and December, we developed an overall working group charter document and schedule. We interviewed multiple stakeholder groups, including residents. These are kind of hand-picked people, but nevertheless, those people that we found were impacted, or actually some were folks that had just built a new house, a larger home in the neighborhood, and what their thoughts were. We interviewed city staff and also a smaller group of builders, remodels, kind of what they're seeing in the market conditions, what new home builders are asking for when they come to them. A lot of the ones we interviewed, they built to suit in general. They weren't necessarily spec builders, but there of course are speculation builders in there. We also created a city blog site for further discussion, and Jordan was nice enough to put that together for us. If you go to Speak Up Edina, it's on there right now. I think it's been live for a couple days. I didn't see any comments on there yet, but it's get out some information that it's there. So our findings to date, when we got into this, it seemed like most things kind of fell under two overall themes, and I use that loosely because things can go in different directions. But one was just about construction. What's happening on these sites, where they're staging equipment, are they using the streets, are they leaving debris on the site? A lot of complaints about that from the residents. The other piece was new home sizes and setbacks. A lot of things about massing is it's really too big for the lot that it's on. A lot of this is coming from 50-foot lots, which in general people are, a lot of cases, building to the maximum that the code allows. So it looks a lot different in many cases from what was there before. There might have been a single level or a story and a half, but it's still within the zoning in general, but it looks much different for the neighborhood. Grading and drainage issues we heard of, and tree removal. One thing that at least I've been noticing in my neighborhood in particular is that it looks different now. The canopy is going away as you get more houses to build. There's nothing right now that says a house doesn't have, or that anything needs to be preserved. They can come in and essentially clear that out. There's nothing that says they either have to leave anything or replace any trees for the future with that as well. So to a couple things of the construction project impact, the past practices, what residential builders were guided informally by city staff. There was nothing that formal in writing that you gave to them, handed to them to say, here, you have to follow this. So that led to some inconsistent direction to the builders, and with that not being clear, some of the builders, may have overstepped their bounds or done some other things. The new practice is city has enacted a formal construction management plan. Also, along with that came out about a month and a half ago. Along with that, the city is also staffing up to actually go out and inspect all these sites weekly. The goal is to get out to the sites weekly, versus before it would maybe only during building inspections. This would be inspections about the site more and seeing if the garbage is picked up, if they're staging on the street, and along with that. Also there'd be posted site contacts on the construction site, so the neighbors and things could see who to call when there's a problem on the site, either the city staff number or that builder number along with that. And working hours. It essentially took a lot of the ordinance that already exists, put them in a nice, easy format, gave them to the builders saying, there's no more excuses. We're giving those to you right now. The other piece with the new home setbacks, the current practice is all projects are governed by an R1 zoning, as you're probably well aware, so it's same throughout the city, no matter what the age of that city was, as you probably where our city was developed in much over time. So we really have right now a one-size-fits-all zoning ordinance. The proposed practices, so at the end of our public input process, the Planning Commission may choose to recommend changes to the zoning code because of that. There could be new regulations, ordinances, conditional use, or there maybe is new overlay districts or a new zoning designation for residential. So I just wanted to, this is in your packet, I won't get into a lot of details on it, but Carrie's been, and staff has been nice enough to go through and look at what Edina and how they compare to a lot of our surrounding city zoning comparison. I just want to point out one thing on here in particular is building coverage. Right now, essentially the city of Edina is at the low end of that. The only one that might be the same or smaller is Minneapolis for some of their lots, but for the most part, Edina is already below the existing or the surrounding area's lot coverage on a lot of these. Same with height, same with a lot of other things. So right at this point, really, Edina doesn't appear to be out of tune with their zoning ordinances. And so what's the deeper dive into what else is going on? I think that's what we'll try to get to. So here's the proposed working plan we were looking at. So starting at the top real quick here where the blog is up, Speak Up Edina, that's out there right now. The intent is that some of the planning commission members may respond and go through that as things come up, and really trying to get the interaction going with that and make it a feedback session. The 9th, which is today, we're giving the initial presentation to the planning commission, again looking for approval or suggestions really to go forward on this. Right now we've set up 2 public input forums, January 26th and January 31st, both at the senior center. One is on a Thursday night, excuse me, the first one is on a Saturday. The second one is on a Thursday night, trying to capture different audiences. We're still working on what and taking any suggestions of what exactly that format should be for those. But the intent was that they're standalone meetings. So in other words, if you miss one, you're not missing something in the other one. So they would both be kind of equal footing. Our goal then would be to summarize these recommendations, see if there's any nuggets in there, see if there's any very distinct things that are going on, and potentially provide recommendations back. Come back to the Planning Commission on the 13th with some of these recommendations, again, working with staff, working with other areas to propose some things. Finally, whatever comes out of that, we have a joint meeting with the City Council then on March 5th, and to get to that point as to what recommendations coming from us, and then also talking to council to see what recommendations they would be comfortable with, what they'd want to pursue, anything else they would have. And then after that, it's a little TBD, because we really don't know at this point what the recommendations would be, how much timing would be involved with those. So it's a little vague after that. Obviously, everything would have to go through the public process and the hearings with the council and commission. But we thought it was a good place to get to, try and get that March 5th meeting as the time to bring forth whatever recommendations we may have. So I don't know if Commissioner Potts or Forrest have any other comments to this, but I'll leave it kind of open or answer any questions or anything we have.
Mr. Potts?
I guess just to reiterate a couple of Mike's key points is that construction management plan is in force as of late December. I don't know the exact date, but that is in place and has been rolled out.
I would like to see it retroactively. Because there are a lot of sites going on right now. I mean, it's I don't know how many exactly, but there was 100 permits last year, so there's I'm guessing there's probably 25 to 50 still going on right now that may not be quite affected by that.
Yeah, and then secondly, just to emphasize, we've got a lot of ways to take public input. We really hope we get a lot of input, whether it's through the blog or in person at these meetings or email. Thank you.
Commissioner Forrest, anything you wish to add? Okay. Question I have is how are we publicizing these public input meetings?
Jordan could help out, that'd be great.
Chair Grable, we are issuing a press release tomorrow about the public meetings and about the Speak Up Edina site, the discussion going on there. I believe, I don't know if there's going to be any public notices sent out, that I don't know. But otherwise, we can post the dates and the information about the blog on the city's Facebook page, on the city's Twitter page, and try to get that out there. Yep, I hope that with the press release that we issue, I hope that it will be picked up and published by the Sun Current, Edina Patch, possibly the Star Tribune, some of the news stations around in the metro. And
Star Tribune called me today, and I gave them these dates too. So hopefully they'll be in if they write an article. That's supposed to come out on Saturday.
Right.
So the other thing too is, I know it's a little, it's neighborhood specific, but, and I saw the Morningside Neighborhood Association update come out. They already had talked about it, but I was actually going to send this to them as well to, to give them the whole information on it, and with the 2 meetings and the blog site. If you have any other suggestions, we're certainly, open to those. Again, part of this, and then there's the public process, you know, just word of mouth too, of whatever we can do on that. And we will give the legal notifications, correct? These are public meetings.
It's not a legal public hearing, but we can, as part of that press release, it will be in the Sun Current.
Okay.
But it's not a legal notifications required for our typical
I don't know if
public
anyone ever
hearings.
reads those anyway.
Some of the commissioners may have their own Facebook pages. They might want to put a blurb on their own page to their friends, FBBs. And there's also a Facebook site called Politics in Edina, and you know, we can get something in on that one as well. So this is a good effort, and I hope we really get it publicized and get some good input from everybody. Other comments? Commissioner Schroeder?
Mr. Chair, I had asked Carrie to pass along a photograph of, it's actually 2 photographs of construction, sure. And I think this actually fits into, Commissioner Platter, something you said about the loss of tree canopy. And it's not just the removal of trees, it's the impacts on trees during construction. And I would hopefully point out the obvious here, that this is not good for trees. It doesn't matter what season it is, piling earth 6 or 8 feet high around the trunks of trees is not a good practice for promoting tree health. And so much has been said as we've gone through these about neighborhood character, and people do come back quite often to the canopy, to the tree canopy, as Commissioner Platter mentioned. And this, it may not be an impact that's recognized in 2 or 3 years, but 4 or 5 years, this does have an impact to trees, not just the piling of the earth, but the removal of earth, the compaction of the root zone around the trees. This kills trees. And if we're serious about trying to use tree canopy as a neighborhood character element, I think we need to be more aggressive. It's not just a construction management thing, it actually has to get into our ordinance. We don't have a tree removal or tree protection ordinance. But we've heard a lot of people say, as they provided plans to us, that they intended to maintain the trees, protect the trees, use the trees. These trees won't be here. This is bad for these trees.
Where was the picture taken?
This is in South Harriet Park.
Unfortunately, I thought maybe it was going to be another city.
Other comments?
Mr. Chair, I just chime in. I just wanted to thank our fellow commissioners for their hard work on this. It's terrific work. It's a challenging issue, and you know, I know this started when we were wrestling with a number of different kind of serial variances on lot size. I know one of the remedies that you listed was the raising or the limit of 1 foot increase in the finished first floor. I think we've had 3 or 4 of those. So it's an important topic, and you've done great work in teeing this up, and I look forward to hearing more about the input at the public meetings and then discussing it with the city council and seeing where we head to try and address some of these issues.
Other comments? I echo what Commissioner Staunton has said. Thank you very much for the work you're doing on this. It is important.
So I don't know, do we have to do you need us to say, go get them?
Well, that'd be helpful.
It looks great to me.
Yeah, and again, part of it was the build-up to get to here to say, does this make sense where we're going? Does this, a sequential thing, and does it, the first 2 months were just a lot of fact gathering and other things, and part of it is just for people watching was that reason we didn't have a lot before Christmas is people were focused on Christmas. So we thought we'd try to get organized at the end of the year, and then now we're ready to go early in this year to hopefully people are back from their holidays and don't have the cough or the flu and come out and
if I can just add one suggestion in
pieces.
terms of the outreach, and it occurred to me just when I was recounting the history, we had all of these, especially over in the Pamela Park kind of area, all the variances, and they were over a long stretch of time, and we had a lot of people who came and expressed concern about that. If we have any of that contact information, it wouldn't be bad to reach out to them and let them know we're trying to follow up on this issue, and we'd like their input when it's not a crisis.
So what you're saying is go back to a lot of the people that had come in and testified for some previous variances, or
Right, or they even sent letters, and they might have a phone number on the letter or an email.
contacted the city about
Right.
that, right? And I think one of the things you were doing, and maybe update that, is when people were contacting the city earlier, we had a statement saying, we're working on it, and now maybe you go back with everyone that had written and send an updated email saying,
Right.
well, here's the dates that you can come and comment.
Right, because we've
So-
all received letters from various people
Yeah,
expressing concern. We should make sure we follow back with them.
Yeah, staff has compiled a list from the emails, and we can add to that based on the, all those subdivisions that we had. Go back to the minutes, find those names. Some of those people we know off the top of our head. And so also, if the planning commission approves, is okay with this general concept too, I had mentioned to the city manager in his Friday report, kind of summarize what we're gonna do and maybe include that little flow chart for the dates, so the council is aware also that this is coming at them.
That'd be good. I think it would be appropriate to take a motion to endorse the proposed working group action plan, so that there is something on record that we do
So moved.
endorse this. Is there a second?
Second.
Other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I got an idea on building construction for you. Next item, correspondence and petitions. I don't know if we have a council connection. You received the attendance sheet for the year, and apparently this starts again in January, so Arlene and Michael will share the first prize.
Probably the same as the second prize.
Well, oh, it's a great incentive, so, but thank you for your attendance and work during this past year. Chair and commission member comments. I don't have any particular comment. Do any of the commission members? Commissioner Platter?
I have a comment, and so I got an iPad for Christmas, which is really cool, by the way. But I just want to point out that Jordan, or city, has a site called iLegislate. There's an app you can get on your iPad that'll download our whole agenda, and essentially our whole packet. So if anyone has one, want to do that, contact Jordan, because I'm officially paperless now, and I'm asking Jackie not to send me the packets. So one less small tree to kill every week.
I noticed that you're able to on the schematics and the maps, you're able to make those larger. So that
yeah, I can zoom in, I can note it up. It's really slick. I mean, if Jordan, demonstration some night or something, it's nice.
Are you suggesting that the commission be issued?
I already tried that angle, so then I asked Santa Claus, and he came. So.
Well, thanks to Santa. Other commission member comments?
Yeah, the city gave us the app, if that's.
Staff comments?
I do have one. I'd like to invite the planning commission to a ULI workshop that we've just officially scheduled with the city council last night at their meeting. They've been, ULI has got a program put together. It's called Navigating the New Normal, where a development panel comes in and has a discussion with city councils and planning commissions, what to expect from developers when they come in, and have a development proposal before you. Kind of the new way of interacting with developers, councils, and planning commissions. The date has been set for February 12th. It is a Tuesday night. Right now, it is planned to be held at the Senior Center from 6 to 8. So that's Tuesday, February 12th.
Carrie, could you send an email out to the members of the commission about that?
I will, and I'll send you a little more information. The panel is being put together of experts that are going to come in and help us out as we talk through this.
What does ULI stand for?
The Urban Land Institute.
Okay. I knew that.
That's for everyone's benefit, right?
That's right. That's for everyone's benefit. Other comments from staff? Thank you, Chris, for your participation tonight.
Just have one more question.
Commissioner Platter?
Is the Slidell coming back next meeting?
I'm sorry?
The Slidell property, excuse me, is that coming back next meeting?
Oh, yes. He's been working on putting together some sketches. I've not seen them yet, but I hope to get them by the end of this week. So yes, that will be on the agenda at your next meeting.
Good. Other comments? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.